Well, there were many reasons. Initially, the first several year break came because when I met him, I was already on a record label, RCA Victor, and I wasn't allowed to make a record with anyone else at that moment. So that was a major obstacle right off the bat. But I knew that in order to make music with David, some miracles would have to happen, and one of them was getting out of my record contract. And at that time, that was a lot easier said than done. With a major label, once they had you, it was difficult to be released. But miracles did happen, and I was able to get out of the contract. But it was a good maybe 2 or 3 years later until I was able to connect with David again, because, you know, life took us in different directions. So we had the first day that we met, and we wrote a song together, and we knew that it was like, wow, it was sweet, and it felt good, and we wanted to do more, but felt hindered by the fact that even if we came up with the most wonderful thing ever, we wouldn't be allowed to do anything with it. So we parted ways, and then many years later, the same agent who introduced me to David called me up and said, you know, I saw David at a party, and the first thing he asked me was, is Christelle Bal available to make music with? And so Brian called me and said, you know, David is ready. He wants to see if you're available at this point. And I said, absolutely. I would love to begin the process again. So that was about 2 or 3 years, and then we started making music together again, and it was wonderful. And then I was actually living in Texas pretty much the whole time, and he was in Hollywood. Okay. So it was kind of these stolen moments when I would come to Los Angeles, and he would open up his studio, and we would create together, and these little pockets of time, and we would do 1 song or 2 songs, and then I would go back to my life, and he would go back to his life, and then there were some other complications that I don't even like to talk about because
no problem.
But then those smoothed out too, and that had nothing to do with David or myself. It was having to do with a third party, and then that smoothed out. But we're talking about, you know, years passing, and I was married and stepchildren and divorced and life happening, you know. But there was this thing that neither of us could really just ever let go, was this music that we made, which was really special and felt really good. And so we just, even though it was a long process, eventually we had, you know, like 9 songs, and at that point it was like, okay, we're close to a body of work, and we both feel very strongly, let's focus and let's really put our hearts and minds to it, and let's finish
do it
a
record.
Yes, let's finish this puppy. And so we did. And so when the music was complete, you know, then it was the process of, now what do we do with the record? You know, now we've got it. So these are just the record coming to fruition was this miracle, that we have this whole body of music. We both love it. Now, what's the step? How do we get it out into the world? You know, so that process took a little while as well, but it was just, life happened, you know, in the midst of making the record. But I think ultimately the content of the music was very rich and very deep, and I was so young when we started that I think really in order to fully be able to emote, you know, the lyrics of the record, and to be able to complete many of the visions for the record, it was requiring me to have more life experience, you know, and I feel like, you know, this record in particular had a life of its own, and it was it knew its own timeline, and I was playing my part. I was fulfilling my role, and when it was time, it was time. But it required a lot of patience and a lot of surrender, but it was absolutely worth it.
Okay, and it's time.
Yes, it's time.
So, what is like to play with David Lynch?
Yes.
What is like?
Well, He's wonderfully patient, and because he knows what he wants, and there's no compromise. There's no, okay, well that was close, so that was almost it, so let's move on. It was like either it's the ultimate vision for a song is fulfilled, or there's no song. There's never a moment where you're gonna let it slide, or it's a filler, or it's good enough. That was never the case. It was either the ultimate, but it was the idea of perfect was interesting to me because it was all about emotion. It was not about technical perfection. It was not about if my voice sounded wonderful. It was if the emotion was appropriate for the song, and it was if I felt it and delivered it in a way that gave you that visceral connection. And if that wasn't there, so in my mind, before I had been a session vocalist, I had been a studio singer, and it was all about kind of nailing and articulating a word, or a perfect pitch, or a perfect delivery. But David was all about the emotion of the song, so that was different than anything I'd ever been a part of before, and very refreshing. And difficult, because sometimes I had to listen to my voice and be like, David, like, really, that take, that's the one? He's like, that's the one. And he knew, and he was unwavering, and he was not willing to negotiate, even if I felt strongly, but he was ultimately always correct. But so if ever I was stuck, or I felt like I wasn't going to make it this time, or there's too much pressure, or I'm cracking, what's going on, he was always ready with perfect direction and guidance and counsel to get me back in the zone and make sure I felt cared for, and just very conscious and aware of my emotional state, and knew exactly how to put me into the spot that was needed for me to be able to deliver what he was wanting me to deliver. Because in those moments, it's like you're in this amazing recording studio with David, and he's played me this amazing piece of music, and he's given me these lyrics, and now I'm sent into a vocal booth. It's very sterile on some levels, and now I have to be the vessel for these melodies to come through. And David's sitting there waiting, smoking a cigarette and drinking his coffee, like waiting for the magic to happen. I'm like, oh, I hope the magic happens this time. Like, what if it doesn't? What am I going to do? But it always did, because he was that patient, and he was that willing to go the distance. And plus he's wonderful to be around. He's a phenomenal storyteller, and he's very positive. So that made the process that much more wonderful.
Okay. And do you have any icons, any gimmick, any influences we didn't know? Maybe.
For the music, I would say there's some women who've done it really well, and who I look to the arc of their careers, and I feel like they know what's going on. I think one of them is Annie Lennox from the Eurythmics, and of course her solo music. I see, women who have had many phases of their career, and have, the term reinvention is kind of thrown around, but they grow up and they mature, and their music matures with them, and they do it very gracefully, and they're still themselves, but it works, it works long term, and they're not holding on to the past. Yeah. They're fully embracing the future, and they move on to do things that really inspire them. She has all these causes that make sense for her, and I feel like that's the most appropriate thing once you've fulfilled yourself as a musician and as an artist, to use that platform to fulfill yourself as a human being on other levels and other causes that are meaningful to you. And I think she's done a beautiful job doing all of that. As far as style or individuality, I would say someone like Nina Simone,
Yeah.
you know, she's so. It's like people would come to a performance, and she was so aware of her own process, and she was the consummate artist in that. When you were with her that night, she would be who she was, and you would get exactly who she was, and it would not. It was undisturbed by whatever was happening around her. It felt like to me like she just delivered, and that's one way to do it. And there's other artists who are utterly collected and composed, and you know, Marlene Dietrich, you know, where everything was exactly how she wanted it to be, and it was an absolute performance, and that was the statement, you know. So there's all these different shades in between these types of artists, a musician who will just bare her soul, and a musician who is utterly composed as she's, you know, giving her art, and there's many I'm inspired by it, and it changes all the time.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. The image with the music on your videos are a little bit weird, psychotic, like a David Lynch movie.
Yes.
It's maybe David inspires you and helps you.
I think it's both ways. I think that he's drawn to women like that, who are like that, and then he also, you know, how he celebrates women and how he tends to want to go deeper into the feminine mystique. You know, he is intrigued by the feminine character, and I think he looks to you know, capture it as best he can, while still kind of giving the impression, I don't know what's going on there, but I want to offer, you know, my vision of what's behind, you know, what's going on behind the eyes of these women who are a bit strange and maybe have dimensions that we'll never know. And I think that he's drawn to women that embody that, you know, for him. So any type of strangeness or oddness, it was never intended to be that for David, but of course I'm influenced by his femme fatales, his feminine icons, you know. I want to represent that at the same time that I want to be myself. But, you know, Dutch, my creative partner and the director of all the videos, we were charged with the task of putting cinema to David Lynch music, and this was like, okay, well, but we don't have scripts, and we don't have budgets, and we don't have anything but our own, you know, creative desire, and then to help with the imaging, Bara was our rock to help me get into character and help embody this vision of this kind of odd beauty, you know, and a little bit on the edge. You don't know quite what's going to happen next when you're around her, and so we and our trio just kind of, you know, conjured these images and these thoughts, but we didn't, you know, we would have a piece, like we would have this incredibly beautiful doll that came into our lives, and okay, so she's gonna be who I'm in love with for this video. Okay. Why? It's because we found her and she found us, and this is what we've got to work with. So let's do this. And but there was never, you know, it's always just it's a free fall into whatever is the destiny of the pieces, and we never really know. And sometimes we're on a carousel, and sometimes we're in an alley, and I'm like, I think I'm just gonna take off my coat now, and then we'll see what happens. And there's people who are like walking by in cars, and we don't know if we're about to, you know, get mugged. But that's you know, and all of that's infused in the videos, and it makes it exciting for us, and it becomes palpable on the film, and then we've got a video.
Okay. Do you have planned to play in a movie with David Lynch?
Well, if, you know, David's on his the way I've heard him speaking about it, he's looking for the big idea, and if the big idea doesn't come, he's not going to do it. He doesn't have to answer to anyone, and he doesn't need to do it for his own personal fulfillment. If it's not readily available, if the idea isn't there, he's not going to conjure it, and he's not going to pretend that it's there and just to make other people happy. So if he gets the big idea and he makes another movie and he wants me to be in it, of course, in a heartbeat. But I feel very complete with the experience that we've had, and I feel very blessed for the time that I've been able to spend with him during the process of making the record. And I feel like if he made a movie and I wasn't a part of it, I have no expectations. I have no feelings of not being complete with our experience. But I do plan to do film. Whether or not it's with David is yet to be seen.
Okay, perfect for me.
Yeah,
it's perfect for me.
Great.
Maybe just one question
Yes.
with Dutch and
yes.
we talk about your Black Book Angel. It is a code name.
It is a code name.
And what is it, this project?
Yes, the project is it's the collaboration, and Dutch's background is he's got a lot of music in his background, but he went to school to create film, and there's all the music that we make. It's always with a mind towards the visual component of the music. So these go hand in hand for both of us, and because of my history with directors and cinema, it works. Our collaboration feels really great, and it works beautifully. So the music that we make is it's what's happening next after the Lynch record, and so there's definitely homage to that style, but it is completely our own, and it's a wonderful process because there's this pressure, there's this, you've got this momentum, and people are kind of interested in what's happening next, and because I've been making music for so long, and I've never felt that any of the music that I've created was right, was perfectly capturing my essence, but this music, I feel, is doing that, and it's Dutch is playing all the instruments. We have a few guest instrumentalists, but really it's us in a loft in San Francisco, just making music and writing and being in the creative flow. And then, of course, after every session, we start dreaming about the visuals and the short films and the music videos, and those go so closely hand in hand. And there's also we've been taking pictures together in all of these exotic locales, so we have lots of imagery, and Black Book Angel is like the undercurrent of emotion. It's like this general feeling that we get from traveling in all these wonderful places and creating art, and how moved we are with music and cinema, and the sensuality of the creation, and the just basically the seduction of this whole process.
Maybe a record in the future?
Oh yeah, a what in the future?
A record.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Definitely music in the future, and
okay.
Yeah, it's coming. It's in the belly.
Okay. It's a child.
She's kicking.
Okay. Screaming child.
It's a lullaby. We're singing her lullaby.
But very beautiful.
It's a beautiful child.
Thank you very much for me. It's okay to
yes,
finish.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.